Hi and welcome back to my channel. After yesterday's Valentine's Day special crime case, we are back on track with our usual upload schedule. We are still in the midst of February, which means we still have 2 more couple cases to cover. But before we get going, as usual, the trigger warnings for today's case are murder as well as murder of a child, mental health issues, self-harm, a relationship with a huge age gap, as well as grooming. So without any further ado, let's get on to the video. Jasmine Richardson was born on the 21st of October 1994 to her parents Mark and Deborah in Alberta, Canada. She also had a brother called Jacob who was 4 years younger than her. Her father Mark worked as a technician and his wife Deborah was a stay-at-home wife. Before Mark and Deborah met each other, they were both into their drug addiction as well as alcohol abuse. And from what I could find, it actually looks like the couple met while in rehab. They got to know each other and decided to help each other through this process. And once they had gotten into a relationship and even got married, they still continued to support each other. For example, the family didn't have any alcohol at home. They all lived in a town called Medicine Hat, and this city is described to be a lovely place to live in. It was a neighborhood where you trust your neighbors, and just in general, it was a very safe place to live in. Due to the fact that Jasmine and her brother Jacob were only 4 years apart, they actually went to the same school, and Jasmine would be very overprotective of her younger brother. Jasmine is described as a popular girl, not like popular, but she was very well liked by other people. Jasmine was also doing very good at school. She got good grades. I believe that she was even in the swimming team and in a fine arts program. So Jasmine didn't have to worry that much about Jacob because she had a feeling that he would be just fine. And as for Jacob, he did have a best friend, a neighbor called Garrett. And those two are described to be just like brothers. Jacob is described full of energy, he liked hockey and overall was just playful. So to the outside world, this family looked like the perfect family. They would spend a lot of time together and they went on vacations and had game nights. The family was also very well liked by the neighbors, who over time became very close friends with the family. But this image of this perfect family would soon start to crumble. Once Jasmine had turned 12 years old and had gotten into her preteen years, that's when her personality started to change drastically. She lost all interest in the things that she loved. She would meet new friends who were more into the alternative scene, goths, emos, all that kind of stuff. And Jasmine just fell in love with this new fun scene. She saw herself in everything that this group represented. The way they dressed, the music that they listened to, the fact that they all seemed to bond over their mental health issues. So as time went on, Jasmine started to transform herself to kind of fit better in with the rest of her newfound friends. She started to experiment with dark eyeliner, black clothes. Jasmine would also start to wear her hair kind of in her face, and with her appearance changing, so did her personality. Jasmine would start to become this quiet, kind of observant girl. And it wasn't like she was upset or anything. It was more of a personal choice because she thought that she would fit in better that way. And this friend group would constantly hang around in the malls. Considering Jasmine's friends were all a bit older than her, they were all around 16, 17-ish. And Jasmine, I believe, had just turned 12 years old. And since they were older, they would go to concerts and Jasmine would just come along with them. I've seen Slipknot and Misfits being listed as a few of her favorite bands. And mind you, those aren't always like big shows in arenas. Majority were just basement shows, and there would also be a lot of older men at those concerts. And as far as I'm aware, Jasmine's parents didn't exactly know what their daughter was up to. And at one of those concerts, Jasmine would meet a man called Jeremy Steinke. And Jeremy was 23 years old, so 11 years older than Jasmine. He was also a high school dropout, and he didn't have a job, as it seems he also didn't really want to get a job. Jeremy was also taking a lot of drugs, and it wasn't like a full-on addiction, but he did experiment with them. Jeremy, as far as I know, grew up only with his mother, and unlike Jasmine, he had a pretty tough childhood. His mother was battling her addiction with alcohol throughout Jeremy's whole life. Jeremy's father is said to be a very, very abusive man, mostly to Jeremy's mom, and that may also be the reason why she turned to alcohol in the first place. So he basically had to raise himself and teach himself the needed skills to survive. And because of that, Jeremy didn't really know right from wrong, because he would get into trouble in school for causing trouble and fighting, but no one was punishing his father for hitting his mother. And after his parents broke up, his mother would have a few random boyfriends over. And by the age of 13, Jeremy was very depressed, anxious, and he was also diagnosed with ADHD. By that time, he would also start to self-harm, and he would also start smoking weed. And he would smoke weed every single day from this point forward. And eventually, he was introduced to the alternative scene. Jeremy, I believe, was more on the punk goth side. He liked to spike up his hair, and he also wore a lot of black eyeliner combined with studs and spikes. Once he entered high school, he started to switch up his hair looks by either shaving or dyeing his hair. And Jeremy would also start to wear a few drops of blood in a necklace around his neck. Now, I don't know if it was his own blood or maybe the blood of an ex-girlfriend of his, and to be honest, I don't really think I want to know. But this blood had a deeper meaning to him. Jeremy started to tell people that he was in fact a 300-year-old werewolf, and that he needed to drink blood in order to be able to live on. Apparently, there was even one time where Jeremy, along with a friend of his, would put blood into a cookie mixture, and they would bake and eat these literal bloody cookies. Jeremy at one point even tried to take his own life by hanging himself. This plan, thankfully, didn't go off though. And the reason for his suicidal thoughts was that he was severely bullied at school for being this outsider and having a terrible life at home with no friends at the time. Jeremy thought that this was his only way out. So Jeremy and Jasmine saw each other at this concert, and they started talking, and Jeremy was very smitten by Jasmine. He would say how beautiful Jasmine is, and Jasmine didn't really look like she was 12. I've seen photos of her, and I would have guessed her maybe 16, but definitely underage. And he was a 23-year-old grown man. So they started talking at one of those concerts, and they were both very smitten with each other. So Jeremy asked Jasmine if he could see her again, to which she says yes. And they would meet up a couple of times, so at least by now he surely must have known how old Jasmine actually was. And after a while of seeing each other, Jeremy asked Jasmine if she wanted to be his girlfriend. So they get into a relationship with each other. As it turns out, Jeremy was also part of this alternative group that Jasmine was in. And as for Jasmine, Jeremy was way more interesting than the boys in her age. He had a more dominant personality, He was kind of the leader of this friend group. His energy was just there, I guess, if you know what I mean. And a lot of younger girls were also very fond with Jeremy. And for Jasmine to have Jeremy committing to her must have done something for her. But this relationship wasn't good for either one of them. Jeremy would offer Jasmine to kind of help her out to find her way in this scene. Just things like, how she liked her hair and her makeup to look like, what kind of clothes she preferred. And he also helped to set her up a MySpace account. And Jasmine's parents became more and more concerned over time with the way that their daughter's personality had been changing. At first she was just experimenting with makeup and her hair, but by the end of it, it seemed as if the Jasmine that her parents knew and loved didn't exist anymore. Jasmine wasn't just changing her look, but she also started to dress a lot more revealing and provocative. And soon they found out about Jasmine's 11-year-older boyfriend Jeremy. And to say that they were shocked would be an understatement. One night her parents weren't at home, so Jasmine was supposed to watch her younger brother Jacob. And once her parents left, Jasmine told Jacob that she was just going to go to the gas station real quick and that she's going to return very soon. But in reality, Jasmine left her younger brother at home alone to go to a concert with Jeremy. But Jacob called the parents as soon as Jasmine left, and he basically told them look guys, Jasmine just left and I'm kind of by myself. And I think that's how the parents realized what was actually going on. Mark and Deborah weren't mad at their daughter. Well, they were mad at Jasmine because she left her 8-year-old brother at home alone, but they weren't really mad about Jeremy because they understood that Jasmine was starting to become a teenager and that her hormones just started to kick in and that she was kind of a victim of Jeremy. To them, Jeremy was a grown man who not only was grooming their underage daughter, but to them, he was also raping her. Jasmine's parents were trying their hardest to explain to their daughter that she's not to see this man ever again and that they are putting their foot down on this one. But for Jasmine, it seemed like the biggest punishment. She just couldn't understand why her parents were being so mean and forbidding the relationship because to her, Jeremy was her true love. And I think she obeyed her parents maybe for a week or two, but eventually she just went behind her back yet again. But Mark and Deborah quickly caught on to what Jasmine was doing, so they took all kind of electronics away from her. They tried desperately to keep their daughter away from this grown man. Mark and Deborah told Jasmine that she couldn't go to any concerts anymore because they didn't trust her anymore, that she wasn't going to see Jeremy there. So with her parents taking more and more control back, Jasmine started to become very frustrated and the family dynamic started to crumble each day a little more. But eventually Jasmine had found another way for her to be able to talk to Jeremy because he had some kind of forum, I believe it's called Vampire Freaks, for people like him who believed that they were a vampire or a werewolf. They decided to create a fake profile on there, and in case the parents would ask any questions, Jasmine would just be able to say that she was just talking with one of her friends from school. Jeremy's username was Soul Eater, and Jasmine chose for her username to be Runaway Devil, and she also changed her age from 12 to 15 years old. So now they are talking every day, just like previously, and her parents had no idea that Jeremy was now back in their daughter's life again. As they keep talking, they are trying to come up with a plan to see each other, but this turned out to be harder than originally thought, because Jasmine's parents still didn't really trust her. Mark and Deborah would drive Jasmine to and from school. They did let her attend her concerts, but one parent would always go with her. And for Jasmine, she was embarrassed by the fact that her parents not only went with her, but stood directly next to her. No other parent was there, but again, Jasmine is just 12 years old. Everyone else attending the concerts was, I think, at least 16. Jasmine, over time, even tried to get herself into foster care. She applied a couple of times, but was denied every single one. And on top of that, Jasmine attended a Catholic school where they had strict no makeup, no extravagant hairstyles, no crazy color, no provocative clothes. Well, I think that this school even had a dress code. But Jasmine didn't really care about any rules. She would still wear her makeup and wear whatever she wanted. And this, of course, had gotten her into a lot of trouble. So Jasmine and Jeremy keep talking over this vampire forum. And Jeremy at one point writes to Jasmine saying, "You were a sight for sore eyes, and I miss you more than killing people. Can we get together and kill people together?" And Jasmine just replies to him, "Killing people sounds like fun, and yes, I sure miss you too. A large amount that cannot be contained in mere words. I love you." And Jasmine's parents, after a while, well, they knew that Jasmine was on a computer, but she told them it's for school and whatnot. But eventually they kind of get the feeling, maybe we should check what exactly she's doing on that thing. So they went through the computer, and not only do they find the said forum, they find out that their 12-year-old daughter was talking to a lot of older men. They also see that she is still involved with Jeremy, that she keeps saying that she is 15 years old, and on top of that, her parents discovered that she had also sent provocative and indecent images of herself. So Mark and Deborah at this point are just so mad, but even more scared for Jasmine. So they decide, because nothing seems to work, they went ahead and got family counseling. And this seemed to actually work for the family. They seemed to grow closer again. And for the next couple of weeks, everything seemed to kind of getting back to normal again. Eventually, the parents even agreed to let Jasmine go to her concerts again. And Jasmine didn't really put up a big fight when they told her that they were going to come along with her. But only 30 minutes into the concert, Jasmine had disappeared. And of course, Mark and Deborah started to freak out because they thought maybe something had happened to her. So they went looking for their daughter, and they find her in the back of an alley in full-out makeout session with Jeremy. They immediately pulled the daughter away from this man, and they were having none of it anymore. They told him to stay as far away from the daughter as humanly possible. And they also told him that he was nothing more than a pedophile, for him to even let this get as far with a 12-year-old. And I can completely understand the reaction of the parents. Jasmine was a 12-year-old girl having a relationship with a man who is 23. Naturally, they want to do something about this to prevent worse things from happening. But still, Jasmine again found a way to keep talking to Jeremy. Her school had a library where they also had computers that the students could use. And Jasmine would skip all her classes and just be glued onto this computer talking to Jeremy. And whilst talking to him, Jeremy sent an email to Jasmine saying, "I have a plan. It begins with me killing them and ends with me loving you." Jasmine responded, "So we are set. I'm going to try and call you, but I don't really know if I will be able to. They are threatening me, like I hate them so much, but I hope this won't bring us farther apart. I hope to talk to you soon. I love you with all my heart." To which Jeremy replies, "I love your plan, but we need to get a little more creative with the details and stuff. I wish they wouldn't treat you that way. It angers me to hear that I dislike them very much. Don't worry, I love you too much, my sexy beast. I hope to hear from you soon too. Take care, my love. You have the key to my heart, and soon enough you shall have my heart. If I die, you won't be able to hear just how much I love you. And mind you, she is at school, while the two of them try to figure out how to murder her parents. So a few days after they had come up with this bright idea to murder, Jeremy took to his MySpace and wrote, "My girlfriend's family is totally unfair, and they say that they really care, they don't know what is going on. They just assume as the greed continues to consume. She is slowly going insane. She continues to think that I came into her life to help her out and stop what they keep trying to shout. They will regret what they have done, especially when I see that they are gone. They shall pay for their insolence. Finally, there will be silence. Their blood shall be payment." And he wrote all of that basically saying, "I'm going to kill." And no one batted an eye over this post. And it wasn't just a post. He talked openly how he's going to kill Jasmine's parents. And that one person stepped in, or at least thought, hey, maybe he is for real about this whole thing. Not one single person. In April of 2006, Jeremy was just casually hanging out with one of his friends smoking weed when he turns to his friend and says, "I'm going to kill my girlfriend's parents, but I would kind of need a little help doing so." This friend thankfully said no, but Jeremy just kept going along, asking his friends if someone would help him. He also started saying that if he didn't go through with this plan, that Jasmine would leave him. And that Jasmine would say things like, "If you really loved me, you would do this for me. If you don't, I'm gonna break up with you because it shows that you don't really care about me." And the more pressure that Jasmine put on to Jeremy, he eventually caved. And on the 22nd of April in 2006 is where the tragic events of today's case take place. The Richardson family had a barbecue that day, just outside, enjoying the weather. Jeremy, on the other hand, spent the whole day drinking and doing drugs, basically preparing himself for what he was about to do. Around 9 p.m., Jeremy then drove to a friend's house and desperately plead for this friend to help him commit this crime. This friend, shocked by what he was hearing, tried his best to calm Jeremy down because he could see that Jeremy was obviously under the influence. So eventually Jeremy goes back home and he invites another friend of his to come over to hang out. So this friend went over and they watched the movie Natural Born Killers. And just kind of explaining the movie, just in case somebody hasn't watched it, it's about a girl and a boy who killed the girl's parents and let the younger brother of this girl live. And in this moment, Jeremy turned to his friend and calmly said, "That's where my situation is different, because Jasmine is actually going to kill her brother." Now, this friend didn't really say all that much about it. And around 3 a.m., Jeremy went over to his drug dealer, where he purchased cocaine. He proceeded to down it with a whole bottle of wine and a whole bottle of vodka. So he is close to passing out, and that's when he went over to Jasmine's house. They agreed to have kind of a code word for Jeremy to throw something at Jasmine's window. So once he arrives, he threw a pine cone at her window. Jasmine would go to the basement and unlock it to try and stage a burglary. And because Jeremy at this point was very intoxicated, he wasn't necessarily quiet. In fact, he made such a commotion that it woke Deborah up. So she goes downstairs to check it out, because she probably thought that Jasmine was just trying to sneak out. As she reaches the basement, she comes face to face with Jeremy, who was wearing a ski mask, fishnet gloves, a black hoodie and black pants. And he was also holding a knife in his hand. As soon as Deborah saw the weapon, she started to scream on the top of her lungs. And she started to run back upstairs, but Jeremy had gotten a hold of her. And he started to stab Deborah. And that's when Deborah Richardson ended up losing her life. And they made so much noise that Mark had now woken up as well. Mark, upon hearing his wife scream, grabbed a knife that he kept in his nightstand, and as he made his way out of the bedroom, he encountered Jeremy. And that's when, according to Jeremy, he got really scared because he wasn't prepared for Mark. Yes, he was younger, but Mark was bigger and stronger. Mark chased at him and actually managed to get on top of Jeremy, where he tried to stab him in the chest, and at some point of them fighting, Jeremy manages to shove his fingers into Mark's eyes. So now Jeremy manages to climb on top of Mark, where he proceeded to stab him multiple times. And that's unfortunately also when Mark Richardson ended up losing his life. After he was finished, Jeremy dragged the body of Mark down into the basement where Deborah was lying. And then there was only one more person left, Jasmine's younger brother, Jacob. He also woke up from all this commotion going on, and he was hiding in a corner of his room with his lightsaber in his hand. Jasmine goes inside his room, took him into her arms, and told him that he was going to be okay. And that's when she actually started to choke him. But Jacob actually managed to break free from her hold, and as he was running downstairs, Jacob came face to face with a bloody Jeremy. This poor, scared 8-year-old boy just looked at him and looked at the knife in his hand and said, "I'm scared and I'm too young to die." Jasmine later said that she felt like she also had to kill Jacob because she didn't want him to go and live in foster care. And she also didn't want her brother to have to live with the trauma of what had happened. It's also not exactly known who killed Jacob because Jeremy says that it was Jasmine and vice versa. Once everyone was dead, Jasmine grabbed her pre-packed bag, and as she was grabbing her stuff, Jeremy sits in his car, and that's when it hits him. Like, what have I done? I've just killed 2 people. I've officially ruined every chance of starting my own family, working towards a career. So Jeremy now starts to realize that he could spend the rest of his life locked up behind bars. So Jeremy just drove off, leaving Jasmine in the house with her now deceased family. And once Jasmine came out and no sight of Jeremy, she called herself a cab because she thought that he just went back home. Jasmine manages to calm him down. They clean themselves up, they bury the weapon along with their clothes, and what do after that? They decide to go out and party. And at this party, they just got wasted. And they just got wasted with alcohol and drugs. And now, so intoxicated, they actually start going around and telling people that they had just murdered Jasmine's whole family. And apparently they went into a lot of detail. On the 23rd of April, so basically the next day, Garrett, remember Garrett, Jacob's best friend? His family was getting ready to attend church, just like they did every Sunday. And because there was still time, Garrett asked his mom if he could go over to Jacob before they had to go. His mom saw the truck still parked in the driveway, so she said yes, he can go over. So Garrett went over and knocked, but no one opened the door. So he waited patiently and then knocked again, but still no response. So Garrett, being a child and maybe curiosity also had gotten the best of him, decided to go to the basement window because it was the only window that he was tall enough to look through. And once he saw the horrific images, he ran to get his mom. And once she saw what was going on, she actually locked herself and her family in and called the police because for all of this woman knew there may be a serial killer out on the loose. The police arrived at around 1 p.m. and they straight away broke the door down. They actually found the body of Deborah and Mark, who showed multiple stab wounds to them. And in the upstairs room, they found the body of 8-year-old Jacob. He was still in his bed with his lightsaber still in his hand, and his throat was slashed open. So to the police it was a clear case of murder, but they initially thought it to be a murder-suicide. Because next to Max's body there was a screwdriver right next to his hands. But this theory was quickly thrown overboard because once police took a closer look around the house, they came across some family pictures which had 4 family members on it. So upon learning that there was a second child, police became very worried. Like, where is she? Was she kidnapped? Was she killed somewhere else? So just within hours, the police had actually placed an Amber Alert for Jasmine Richardson and even went public, telling the people to come forward with any information that they might have. Police also went around the neighborhood asking if someone had seen or heard anything, but no one had any information. The neighbors also said that the Richardson family was very well liked, and as far as they knew, they didn't really have any enemies. And as the forensic team was examining the bodies, they actually discovered that Jacob, apart from his slashed neck, had also 2 stabbing wounds to his chest. And as they keep examining the house, they also found blood on the light switches. Now, to the investigators, this seemed as if the murderer knew exactly where the light switches were, because there was only blood there. If it was just a robbery and the murderer tried to find the lights, there would be also blood across the walls. Eventually, the officers called the school of Jasmine, and that's when they learned that Jasmine had tried to apply to foster care a few times. They also found out that she occasionally snuck out and just in general was causing some trouble. So upon learning this information, Jasmine's friends were now also being questioned. And they actually told the officers that Jasmine talked a lot about killing her parents. They also went through Jasmine's locker at the school, where they found some kind of comic where a young woman was portrayed whilst she was setting her house on fire, whilst everyone else was still inside. So her missing flyers soon turned into wanted flyers. And this newfound information quickly turned over. Her face was everywhere, everyone was talking about it. Now, once Jasmine and Jeremy realized just how quickly those news started to spread, panic slowly started to rise. But at the same time, a mutual friend of Jasmine and Jeremy, a girl called Cassie, wanted to go on a road trip with 2 of her other girlfriends. And Cassie asked Jasmine and Jeremy if they wanted to tag along. Jasmine and Jeremy quickly said yes because they realized that they needed to get away as soon as possible. Now Casey didn't know what had happened to Jasmine's parents. In 2006, social media was barely a thing, but one of Jeremy's close friends, who he asked to help him commit the murder, actually came forward and told the police everything that he knew. And he also told them that he believed that Jeremy and Jasmine were planning kind of a road trip with some other friends. So the police officer and leader was called, and they had police cars placed at every gas station because surely they would make a stop at one. And surely enough, the group did indeed stop for gas. An undercover cop was already stationed there and watching as Casey and her 2 friends pumped gas, bought themselves some snacks and drinks, and whilst waiting to pay, the girls came across a newspaper article where Jasmine's picture was printed, and the article said that Jasmine Richardson was wanted for the murder of a family. The girls actually took the newspaper with them and confronted Jasmine, like, what's going on? But Jasmine just played it down, saying things like, this doesn't even look like me, but she didn't actually deny the murder. So at this point, the girls already knew too much, and by the point they were freaked out and scared, and agreed that they would cover for Jasmine and Jeremy, kind of be their alibi. The group decided to drive to a nearby high school parking lot, but this undercover cop took notice of this car, and so he followed them. and within minutes more police cars showed up. Everyone in this car was immediately arrested. Just 3 days after the murder, so on the 25th of April, police let Casey and her 2 other friends go. But because Jasmine was so young, the police were kind of overwhelmed because they didn't really know how to approach her. At first, they tried talking to her kind of like a father figure, but Jasmine just kept crying and repeating the words, "I'm sorry." And eventually there was a younger police officer, maybe around Jeremy's age, so early 20s. He started to talk to Jasmine kind of as her best friend, and she started to open up and talk this officer through the tragic events of the night. But it still wasn't clear who exactly killed Jacob. So police came up with another tactic. They told Jasmine to write a letter to her parents. And she did just that. She wrote, "Dear my lovely parental units, I am writing in response to the events of Sunday morning. A terrible thing happened. Something I feel was all my fault. You must know I love you dearly, and you are in my prayers. I wish peace upon your souls in the Summerland. To my little brother, I apologize for letting you hear what happened, and also causing you any pain or threatening you so much. To my parents, I hope you know through all of this that has happened, I loved you the whole time. I wish I could take everything back. I wish it didn't happen. I wish you were here with me right now, because now I have no one. I pray that you can forgive me, and Jeremy too, because he was under the influence of mind-alternating substances and did it out of love for me. He is most possibly the kindest person I've ever met. His wish being for my happiness through all of the fight and hatred exchange. I still love you. I am sorry my sarcasm was taken to heart. I never meant to hurt you. I pray that you can be at peace somehow." So basically it was a he said, she said game. But the officers were kind of more convinced by Jasmine's version that it was Jeremy's fault, just by the fact that Jasmine was 12 years old and Jeremy was a grown 23-year-old man. He should have stopped this and gotten the moment where he realized that this was wrong. So police actually made the 2 of them write letters to each other in hopes that they would write somewhat of useful information. So this is the letter that Jeremy wrote to Jasmine. "My dear Cuddle Bunny, I'm sure that you are right, what's done is done. You need not to ask for my forgiveness. Indeed, in due time our empire shall be complete. Before you I was half, now I am whole. I can't go back to being half. You are the one I breathe. You are the moon that breaks through the clouds at night. And you are all I need. I long to feel your soft skin. I yearn for your kisses, for they get me high. I hope that you stay true to your words. I shall remain strong, and sometimes I have trouble sleeping at night. But I'm sure that the thought of you before will get me through the nights. In due time, we shall be together once again. But until that day arrives, stay strong and keep hope and faith. I love you with all my heart and soul. Never forget it, my love. Until we speak again, XOXO Jeremy." There were a lot more letters. Jeremy even proposed in one of those letters to Jasmine, and she of course said yes. So now, I don't know if legally, but basically they had gotten engaged to each other. And the police, although they didn't have enough evidence on who did what exactly, they had enough to charge both with 3 accounts of murder. Jasmine's trial was up first, so she was 14 years old at the time of the trial, and because she was only 12 years old at the time of the crime, there was a law, I don't know the correct term, but it basically says that if a crime is committed by a person under the age or at the age of 12 years, they are to be given a lighter sentence, which I believe is up until 10 years max. And throughout the whole process, her name wasn't even mentioned. Jasmine was just referred as JR, but because of the Amber Alert that was broadcasted, everyone already knew who she was. Jasmine initially pledged to not guilty, and her defense team also tried to blame everyone but Jasmine. They tried their hardest to make this 12-year-old seem as innocent as possible. But despite the efforts, Jasmine Richardson was found guilty of all 3 accounts of murder, and she was sentenced to 10 years. Jasmine actually became the youngest murderer in Canada. But her sentence wasn't behind bars, it was more of a 10-year rehab thing. She was first put into a psychiatric hospital, and once they have seen positive changes in her, Jasmine was put on 4-year supervised probation, where she was released back into society after 4 years. Jasmine still needed to do her checkups with her probation officer, so she was kind of back out in society but with strict supervision. And while on probation, Jasmine managed to enroll into university and even got herself a degree. And in the eye of society, she made very good progress. And on the 6th of May in 2016, she was completely free. Jasmine managed to make a life for herself, get her life kind of back in order. And as far as I know, she stayed on the right path. The judge actually said to Jasmine after her 10 years were up that he thought that her parents and her brother would be very proud of her. And Jasmine's extended family, who stuck by her through this whole process, actually said the same thing. And in 2021, her whole crime record was actually wiped completely. So there are no official records on her anymore. And Jasmine later on went also ahead and changed her name legally. Now regarding Jeremy's trial, his defense team tried to portray him as not responsible for the murders because he was so intoxicated. Jeremy testified initially that he went over to talk to Mark and Deborah, and that's when everything kind of escalated. And by the end of the trial, Jeremy Stein was found guilty of all 3 counts of murder, and he was sentenced to 3 life sentences. Whilst in jail, he also changed his name legally to Jackson, because he will be eligible for parole in 2033, and he wants to kind of distance himself from his past and wants to try and move on as well. And yeah, that's it for today's case. So yeah, we're almost through February, but we still have one more Capri case coming. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the special edition so far, and I also hope you enjoyed the 2 videos up this week. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and also let me know which case you would like to see me cover next. I hope I see you all in my next video. Bye!